Hello, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks, and today we are going to talk about journals and milestones. And so with that, let's just get right into it. Now, I am going to create everything today from scratch. I have a completed journal and milestones app. In fact, I have two of them. If you want to see that, please contact me via email and I'll send that off to you. But for today, we're just going to build everything from scratch as we talk about the journal control and milestones. So I am going to not do that. I clicked on the wrong thing. We want to start from template, and I'm just going to throw in my basic application template here, and I better give it a name. So we'll call it journal slash milestone webinar. Looks like I spelled that correctly. Now I can go ahead and create our application really quickly, and this will just create a basic form and a process timeline and an email template, though we're not going to be able to, or not going to use that. And we'll just create my application directly out of the application template that I have built. And let's start by opening up the form and going to its design view and taking a look at it. Now, because this is from a template, I already have some fields already thrown onto the form, so I don't have to create those. But we do need to talk about journals and milestones in context of what came before them. So for those of you who may have been customers for a long time or who may have just seized upon it as an easy way to pull in user comments, there is an old control called the comment log, and it's right here in the input controls menu. And this was the way that we were able to have some user comments appear on a form in the past. It's not a very sophisticated control. It does one thing. It allows you to make a comment, add the comment, and then that comment gets displayed in a chronological list on the form. So here's what that comment log control looks like. And if I want to just start writing in some comments, I certainly can. And I can make, whatever comments I'd like to make. And this is how they get displayed. They just show up in what is essentially an array below the text box for the comment log. And as you can see, it just presents a chronological list from oldest to newest of all of the comments that have been made. And this is fine, I suppose, if that's all you need to do. But it's hard to have a conversation with a control like this because you can't really see any sort of threaded output or anything like that. If there are multiple conversations and multiple comments going on for different approvers, they just show up in chronological order, which makes it kind of hard to follow. Now, it's a fine control if all you need to do is just store some occasional comments that might be made on your process. So it's not deprecated. It is not useless. It is not something we're trying to replace. It exists and it has a use case, but that use case is relatively limited. And so to provide a better way of communicating between your users and also of recording some special events, we created the journal control. So we're just going to go ahead and remove this comment log control, and we'll drop in a journal control so that we can keep those comments. Where is that journal control? Right there under other input controls. So we're going to throw in a journal control there, and we're actually going to name it, and we'll just call this comments for the moment. This is going to get a little more complex, but we now have our control called comments, and this is our journal control. Now, it operates very differently than the comment log control. So now with this new control on the form, if we go ahead and run the form and see how it works, we can see the first big difference between the journal control and the comment log control, which is that the journal control enables us to have threaded discussions. So I can put my comment in here and hit the send button, and I can put in, another comment. I can put in multiple comments, and each time I put them in, it creates a new little comment box. But unlike the comment log control, there's a reply button for each of the comments. So when I click that reply button, I can send replies, and all of those replies will be stored. I probably should have made this comment log a little bit bigger, shouldn't I? But we can have threaded replies in all of our comments. Now, that is a lot better in terms of just having comments and being able to thread our comments. This is much more comprehensible, much more easy to read. And of course, if you are going to have active conversations, journal control is a great way to do that because we can see all of the replies. And of course, we can have multiple replies to the same thread, each of which create their own thread for those comments. And of course, we can have multiple replies at multiple levels. And so this just tracks all of the different levels of comments that are made and who is commenting to who and when, although admittedly, this is a bit confusing when we look at this because it's all me making comments to me. At its basis, this is just a superior control to the comment log control, but there is much more to it than comments. And let's take a look at the guts of this thing and see how this control works. And we're going to split this off into two things. We're going to talk about the control itself and its properties, and then we're going to expand on it to discuss the topic of milestones. So keep the idea of milestones in mind, but we're going to talk about those a little bit later. Like every other control, it has its own set of properties on the journal tab of the design console over on the right-hand side of the screen. So the name property, every control has a name. We've called this comments. What we did not add was a title. So one of the things that the comment log control doesn't have is a title. The journal control, on the other hand, does have a title, and the title is what will appear at the top of the control when the form runs. What I should probably do is actually keep a version of this form running that we can just refresh rather than constantly doing the save and run, although I'm not sure how much time that saves. So if we look at the form itself, right up here at the top, you can see it says journal, which is fine because it is a journal control, but that's probably not what we want it to say. We probably have some other title that we want to give this. So we can just add a different title to it. And in this case, we'll call it user conversations, and we'll go ahead and save it. And as soon as it finishes saving, we can refresh this form. So we'll wait for the little spinny to go. There we go. Now we can refresh our form. And when we do, we can see that now at the top, it says user conversations. So we can put in a custom title on the comment log control. Now we come to the scope. And this is where things start to get really interesting. The comment log control is very limited, which is to say it doesn't really even have a scope. It's just a control that creates its own little kind of sub array and stores a comment when you make it. And that's all it does. And it will only store that comment on that specific form instance. It's limited to the form instance. However, the journal control is not. It has its own scope. Now, the default is to scope it to the form instance, which is to say, if I have this journal control on a single form instance, and I only want to see the comments that are made on that form instance, then the default is fine. In fact, that's probably the most likely use case. However, we also have the ability to expand that scope to the process instance. In most cases, you won't notice much of a difference between process instance and form instance because in the majority of cases, you only have one form per process. So you have one form, it's connected to one process timeline. Certainly that's what this application has, and that's generally, although probably not a huge majority, but generally that's how your processes work. So if I was to scope this to the process instance in this particular example, I really wouldn't see much of a difference. But you may have a process that uses multiple forms. And if so, and I'm going to be switching between the forms back and forth in the process, then I might want to increase my scope to the process instance. So if I make a comment on one form instance, but I have a journal control on another form, then I can actually see my comments from the other form instances on any of the form instances, assuming that I configure them right. Now, the scope is going to work in concert with this property that's at the very bottom. So I think probably this property would be better served to be placed just below scope or perhaps just above scope. But that notwithstanding, you can specify a comment group name for every journal control that you place on a form, which implies that you may have multiple journal controls on a form, which is perfectly fine. But if you're going to increase the scope, so if we're going to increase the scope, let's say here to the process instance, well, then I need to figure out what comments go into what journal controls. So I'd have to create a comment group name, and this is just for the comments themselves. And if they had the same name across instances, so let's just call this, we'll just call this group the comments group. So if on different forms inside the process, and we're still talking about process instance scope. So let's say I have two forms and I have a comment log control on both of those forms. And I set the scope to process instance. Then when I set a comment group name on both of those controls, then both of the controls will display all of the comments from either of the journal controls. So I can place a comment in one journal control, it will show up in the other journal control. And if I place a comment in the second journal control, it'll show up in the first journal control. Now, the comment group name is important because it does limit what comments show up, and it does allow us to have multiple journal controls on a form, and we can set different comment groups, and on different forms, we can show the comments from different journal controls on the first form. If you don't put in a comment group name, then it's going to show you everything, which you may or may not want, but this comment group enables you to limit each of the journal controls to only showing comments from their sibling journal controls that are in the same comment group. But as I said, if you don't use a comment group name, then everything is going to be shared across all of the forms that are in that process instance. And we can also expand it out even further to the case instance. So just like with a process, I might have multiple forms. If I am working in a case application, I probably have multiple processes that all run inside that case. So now I have, multiple forms, multiple process timelines, all of which are running inside of a single case. And in fact, I might run the same process in a case 2 or 3 times. If you remember the case management webinar, where I have auto insurance case, where you get into an accident, you create the case, and then a couple of things have to happen. I have to have one or more adjusters reports and one or more uh, cost estimates, say from different garages. And so I might have, and each one of those, the adjusters report itself is its own little adjusters report process. The cost estimate process is its own little process. And I might have to run each of those processes multiple times. So if I get into a car accident and I make an insurance claim, an adjuster might have to come out, and probably will have to come out at least twice. Once to do the initial survey of what's wrong with the car, and probably once again after the repair to just show up and look and to report back to the insurance company that the repairs were properly made. So that process is going to run twice. And of course, for the cost estimate, I might go to a couple of different auto body repair shops, let's say 2 or 3, and submit a cost estimate from each one of those. And each one of the repair estimates has its own little process. So now I've got 3 cost repair estimate processes. So in that one case, I've got a main process that is running, that oversees the high level of the auto insurance claim. So that's one process. I have 2 adjusters reports, and I'm running 3 processes. And then I went to 3 different garages. So that's this many processes that are all running inside that case. And by setting the scope of the journal control to the case instance, I can follow any conversation that goes on anywhere in that case. Of course, I may use a comment group name to limit the different conversations that I'm going to display in a particular journal control, or I could leave it blank and I could see them all, but I can run it out to case instance and just see anything that happens in that case. There is also no scope, and I know we put it in there for a reason, but I can't really think of a reason why you would ever set to no scope. But no scope just basically opens it up to the entire system. And I guess if you are going to use a comment group and you want to get all of the comments from, that are anywhere on the system that come from a single comment group. So maybe you want to, concatenate all the comments from, multiple processes that all share the same comment group name for their journal control. I suppose you could do that. It seems like you'd need a really big control, physical size on the page so that you could see. It seems like it'd be hard to track, but it is in there. We can no scope it. Form instance is the common scope. It is the default scope, and it is the scope that is going to be used for the majority of your commenting. So if you use this, even on the same form, even if you just set it to form instance, and we'll just create G1 as the user comment group name. And then we'll come over here and I've selected something. Okay, come on, select for me. And trying to work. Oh, I had it. Where's my cursor? I'm trying to find out where my cursor is. I am not seeing my cursor. It's quite irritating. There we go. There's my cursor. Finally, it's kind of hidden behind that little black bar there. Let me drop in another journal control, and we'll call this other comments. And in fact, we'll just, let's copy this here and let's paste that there, and then we'll call it other comments, and we'll keep it scoped to the form instance, but we will call this one G2 instead of G1. So I have a comment group G1, and a comment group G2, I believe. Yes, I do. So let's go back to my form. Let's refresh it. Actually, I should probably save it first, right? I'm not sure it's saving me any time keeping the form open. I'm not sure it's worth it to keep the form open if I have to wait for the spinny to go before I can refresh the form. I might as well just hit save and run. But now I have two different groups here, and I put a comment in there, and I can put a comment in here, and we can reply in here, and we can do our all of our other stuff that we need to do. And I have two separate journal controls. They're both running on the same form right now. The only thing that they cover are comments, but they're in different comment groups. And so because they're in different comment groups, we're just going to break out each of those comments into their own groups. And we're only going to show a comment from a single comment group. So let me go here and let me get rid of the comment group name there. And let's run the form again. And I wish it would save faster. There's the one problem where you want to show people how to do things and you want to do it live. And along with that comes the inconvenience of having to for wait for the thing to save. And so we can have this comment here, send, and you can have this comment here and send, and there we go. We've got, they still have different comment group names. So what I probably wanted to do was get rid of that and run it. And now they both have no comment group name. So again, we're playing around now. We're kind of just seeing what happens with each of them. Let's refresh our form. Nope, that doesn't send. And submit that form real quick. So give it a second to submit. There, that's what I was trying to get to. So what I've done is I have removed the comment group names. And I guess what I needed to do was submit the form, not just try to make it magically appear while I was doing it live. I needed to submit it. But once I did submit it, neither of these have a group name now, so they're not separated from each other. So if I try to put two journal controls on a form and I don't separate them off by user group names, then when I submit the form, I'm going to have a little problem here because I have two different controls that all share the same group, or in this case, neither group. And so therefore, they're both going to be replicated. So if you're going to have multiple journal controls on a form, you just need to be sure that you have them in different user comment groups. So once again, we'll go back here to G2 and we'll select this one up at the top. Actually, that one was already selected, so I wanted to make that one G1. This is the one that I want to select and make G2. There we go. Now we can run our form again. And we'll give it a second to save. And so now we will add a comment and a reply up here. I'll send, and we'll add a comment here real quick, and then we can submit our form. And as you can see, once the form reloads, I have two separate comments and two separate comments threads running because I'm using separate comment groups for each of the journal controls. And so I'm seeing two different types of information there, which is, of course, the way that we would expect to see the comment group names work. We're going to skip the choose milestone groups and we're going to go straight to height and width. So this gets a little tricky for height and width. By default, it's going to be a 300 pixel tall and 500 pixel wide journal control when it shows up on your form, which we've already seen. I don't really have a great recommendation for you, except personally. So this is not a recommendation. This is just personally how I'd look at it. The 300 pixels seems a little bit limiting. You want it to be tall enough to be useful and to show you enough of a conversation to follow without having to constantly scroll. So I kind of like a bigger height for the control, like 500, not 5,000, 500. The width gets a little trickier here. Setting the width in pixels, I mean, unless you want a smaller control, is not what I would recommend. I'm really more of a fan, especially for accessibility / responsiveness purposes. I'm really more of a fan of setting this in percentages and specifically setting it to 100% rather than having it in pixels. The problem with setting it in pixels is if you set it in pixels, that's going to be a hard number and it's always going to be that many pixels wide, which means on a really wide screen, like I have a big 32-inch monitor sitting right here in front of me. So if I have everything maximized on a really wide screen, I've still got this tiny little dinky comment log box. On the other hand, if I am looking at this form on my phone, I still have a 500 pixel comment log, which means it may go off the edge of my phone screen, which is going to require users to scroll horizontally, which is generally a bad idea too. So setting it to percentage and generally setting it to 100% is probably a good rule of thumb, because then irrespective of the width of whatever viewport you're using, I know that my control, as we're seeing here, will just scroll to fill that viewport. And if I make the viewport smaller, my control gets smaller too, which means if I ultimately, it'll at some point the control itself is, here's the problem. I've got this down here at 500 pixels. So once I make it smaller, I still have this control here, which has a hard-coded width of 500 pixels, is now going to limit what happens whenever I go to a smaller screen. So I'm having to scroll to the right. And the reason I'm having to scroll to the right is because up here at the top, this first control, even though it's set to 100%, because this control is set to 500 pixels, my container is never going to be smaller than 500 pixels. And so this is forcing me to scroll to the right, which is exactly what I don't want to do. What I want to do is to be able to make my screen width whatever width it needs to be to fit my viewport, and for my control to just automatically expand. So you can actually see in this example what happens when you leave one of these controls at 500 pixels. It's at smaller screens going to force some horizontal scrolling on you. And so from a design standpoint, accessibility and responsiveness standpoint, that's just a bad practice. So being able to set each of these at 100 pixels wide, and we won't worry about, not 100 pixels wide, 100% wide. So we'll set this to 100% too. And we can then rerun it. Now, the downside is it's going to look wonky in the online form designer when you set it to widths, because it is expecting, a hard coded value, and you're setting it to 100%. It doesn't interpret it well in the online form designer, but at runtime, it works exactly the way that you would expect. And now, of course, if we go to a really, really tiny, tiny screen, because both of them are set to 100%, I'm still going to see them at 100%. Now, this is obviously a much narrower screen than you'll see on your phone. I think the average phone screen probably runs somewhere in there. So probably 450-ish, 480-ish, depends on your phone, I suppose, and the type of phone and its screen. But this gives me the responsive width that I need. Responsive heights, we don't really care about. Setting a percentage height is nonsensical because we don't know what the height of the viewport is. It doesn't match it to like the width of the screen, because a form vertically can be, any size. So setting a percentage on height is generally a really bad idea. You do want to hard code some sort of height. So as you can see, this top one is set to 500. The bottom one is set to 300. But the width is important because the width, unlike the height, the width does get determined by the size of your browser window, the actual viewport screen that you're using. Height does not. The reason why height does not is that we expect to have to scroll vertically. We don't know how big the content of our page is until it's done. So we can't really throw controls, and we don't really worry too much on the browser side about how tall the window is. If the window is this tall, then fine. We're just going to have to scroll a lot more. So we don't care about height in percentages, but we really do care about widths in percentages, because the way that viewport width is calculated and height is calculated and the effect that they have on the page itself in HTML are handled fundamentally differently. So width, super important for percentage. Height, we just don't care. We can set it however many pixels high that we want. And a pixel in general on a computer monitor is 72 pixels per inch. So a pixel is 1/72 of an inch. Or at least it would be if your pixels were perfectly square. They're actually rectangular, and their measurements are slightly taller vertically than they are horizontally. They're narrower horizontally, pixels. And so it does get a little confusing. So that 72 pixels per inch, that's really a width thing, because it's not technically 72 pixels per inch on height, because the pixels aren't perfectly square. They tend to be a little taller vertically. And so that's just a little aside for those of you who are really, really geeks about getting into accessibility and responsiveness and doing images and things like that. But we now have our two controls on our form. They're in two different groups. They do two different things, but even though they appear wonky now in the online form designer, in the width, so horizontally they appear wonky, the heights are correct, but the widths are weird. But that's fine. At runtime, they'll show the way that we want them to show. There's also a refresh interval property. Now, I can't really sort of demonstrate that to you here without spending 10 minutes building another application and setting it all up for you and making you watch that, which I'm not going to do. But the refresh interval enables you to specify an amount of time in seconds at which you want the control, the journal control, to refresh. Now, again, in most cases, you're going to be looking at the form instance scope, and your journal control is actually on the form. So you're never going to worry about the refresh interval. However, when you are out on the process instance, and especially when you're using case instance, where I could have, at any given time, multiple processes running and a whole bunch of different people looking at a whole bunch of different forms. For example, in my auto insurance suggestion, there might be 6 different processes all running at the same time. I think as a practical matter, they wouldn't all run at the same time, but the possibility exists that they could, which means at any given time, I have 6 different people looking at 6 different forms, potentially each of them all making comments on all those different forms. And so if I am sharing a comment group between all 6 of those form instances, and I want to know when people make a comment and I want it to show up on my form, what I have to be able to do is force the journal control to reload itself so that it loads all of the other comments that might have been made in the other 5 running form instances. And so by setting the refresh interval in second, what I am telling the journal control to do is to poll all of the other journal controls at how many ever seconds it is. So let's say I set it to do it let's say every 60 seconds. And even that might be quicker than I need, but every 60 seconds, what's going to happen is it's going to go out and it's going to do a poll and it's going to look at all of the other form instances. So in our example, the other 5 form instances is going to look for any new comments that have been made. And if they've been made, I want to refresh the control to show me all of those new comments. So I can just set the refresh interval to 60 minutes or 120 or 240, whatever, maybe every 5 minutes, but I can set it in the number of seconds that I want to refresh that control so that it can show me any changes that have been made if I have a larger scope than form instance. Again, like I said, most of the time you're going to be in form instance scope. You're not going to have multiple forms and not going to have multiple processes. So in that case, the refresh interval probably isn't important. Although having said that, it might be. I mean, it is possible that I could have a form instance and I could have even in that case, if I had multiple people looking at the same form instance at the same time, I'd probably want to use form locking so that only one person at a time could edit the form. So yeah, if I'm at form instance scope, I just don't think I'm going to need this because I don't think even in that case, I want multiple people looking at the form all at the same time. I think I want to lock the form while it's being edited by, user A so that user B and user A don't put in different information and have user B overwrite what user A just entered. So the refresh interval, I think, is best for process or case or no scope in terms of the scope that we have applied to the item. And the next property is allow/view user comments. Now, so far, we've talked about the journal control in its basic configuration as a comment control. And it's a nice comment control. It's way better than the comment log. It allows threaded conversations and it's great. But that's not the only use of a journal control. We can turn comments off in the journal control so that users can't make a comment at all. Now, I don't want to do that for this comments control up here at the top, but I do want to do it down here in this second journal control. And I want to turn off user comments. I don't want users to be able to make any comments in that journal control. And the reason is because journal controls have a second use. And that use is to be able to track milestones. And that's what we're going to do with this second journal control. We're going to track milestones. To understand that, we have to understand what a milestone is. In Process Director, there are certain application events that are just baked into the product itself. For example, if we go to the Custom Task Event Mapping tab, actually, let's go to Set Form Data. So if we go to the Set Form Data tab and I click the event dropdown, it shows me all of these events. Now, by default, I haven't created any event fields on this form. So the only events that we're seeing are the events that are just baked into the form cake for every form instance. And these are the events that fire. And largely, these are the order in which the events fire in a form's lifecycle. So when the form is very first opened by a user, there is the form creation event. Next is the view state init event, which is where all of the data that is going to be displayed on that form. If it's a new form, it may just be whatever the default data is. If it is an existing form instance, it will be whatever data has been saved with that form instance. That's where all of that data is placed on the form, and the form is painted. The event is not really an event that fires. We have this in here so that we can specify something to happen on any event that occurs anywhere on the form. So that's kind of a special thing. That's not one of the baked in form events. That just means all events, whatever event fires. Then I have the before conditions and after conditions. So if there are any conditions on the form, such as visibility conditions or enabling conditions that have been placed on the form, this event fires before we evaluate those events. So I might want to break in before the conditions are evaluated and set some property value or something. Then the event conditions are, the conditions are evaluated and the fields are hidden or exposed to editing. And then I have an after conditions event. And now the form is just fully open. It's running and I can do whatever I need to until I hit submit. And when I hit submit, a whole series of other events are going to fire. Obviously, the form has to be validated. So if there are any validation rules, they have to fire. But I have an event that occurs before the validation fires. The validation firing is its own event, even though it's not listed here. But it's not an event that you can touch. So that's why it's not listed here. Then after the validation fires, I have the after validation event. Then I have the form display event. Now, this is kind of a weird one. It doesn't really kind of fit anywhere in the life cycle so far. It's sort of a special one. That is anytime the form is refreshed. So anytime I submit the form or try to save the form, or an event fires that causes a form refresh, basically anything that causes the form to refresh, it's going to kick off the form display event. And so the form display event fires quite regularly, and so regularly, in fact, that if I have an event field, one of the reasons why we set a field dropdowns on the form display event is because every time the form displays, whether that means the form has just been opened or whether the form has been refreshed, it doesn't matter. Anytime that form is redisplayed, and the display event is the form is literally, that's when the form literally gets painted on screen for the end user. And so anytime that happens, I want to fire an event or fire an action on that particular event. That's why we do the field dropdowns on the display event. Because if I have let's say I have two dropdowns and the second dropdown gets filled by data related to whatever I choose from the first dropdown. So I have to choose something from the first dropdown. I choose something, it kicks off the event. And on the form display event, the second dropdown gets filled with the appropriate data from whatever it was that I chose from the first dropdown. Then we have the form completed event. That means we're done with the form. This is when the form is unpainted from the screen. And then I have the AJAX request, and that's an event that gets fired on the client whenever I make an AJAX call. No event, which means don't do anything. We don't want this to happen. This is kind of a placeholder too, where if I just want to pause something, as a designer while I test things, I can just set it on no event. And I can have all of my full configuration, but it will never fire until I associate it with an event. But these are the events on the form. And just as forms have events, process timelines have events too. I mean, not many, but they do, they do exist. So if we go to the set form data, and I select an activity, so let's select like approval 1 here. Activities have events too. They have the task start event, which is an event that fires when the task is first invoked. And then there is a task end event, which is fired after the task has ended. And of course, it either ends the process timeline or it moves to the next timeline activity. So I have 2 events on process timeline. So I have all of these events that are occurring. Because those events are real physical events that are just built into the life cycle of all of the objects, then I can, attach sort of, practical messages to those events. And most of those practical messages are like, this event has ended, and that's great. But sometimes I need to notify users of not sort of programmatic events, things that have happened in the process or something specific that has happened on the form. I need to notify them of status updates. Where are we in the process? What have we completed so far? What does the completion of a particular timeline activity mean at a business level in terms of the process itself? So, for example, I might have a process that has a whole bunch of users who are looking at different things that need to be done all at the same time. I might have 3 or 4 activities that are running concurrently. And when all 3 of those activities are complete, I have reached a milestone in my application. So I can say, internal authors and external authors have all approved this training program. And that is a milestone event in the process. So this is one of those times where we don't really think about this from a technical level, but what does it mean to the end user? What sort of progress updates would we need to supply to the end user? And milestones enable us to do that. So every object in process, well, at least the process timeline and the form, they have a milestones tab that enable us to generate these business type of status updates for our end users. The way that milestones work, and let's add one here, and we're going to have some form milestones, and we'll also have some process milestones. I think probably process milestones are more common, and there's some things that we can play around with to ensure milestones occur. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just talk about the milestone itself. Both the process timeline and the form, and we're looking at the form here, but we might as well go to the process timeline and look at that. They both have the very same UI, and they both operate the same way. The only difference are the events that trigger them. So we just looked at all of those events. So on a form, if we add a milestone row by clicking the Add Row button, we have a set of triggers on the form. Now, form event is only one of the events that we have. So all of those form events that we looked at just a few minutes ago, those are all encapsulated into, on the form side, a single event marker. So if any form event occurs, we can force a milestone to occur. But I have other milestones. Someone adds an attachment. Someone updates an attachment. So let's say attachment added. Now, I might have a whole bunch of different people adding attachments to a process. But at some point, someone very important, let's say it's a purchasing process, and I have people who are, updating, adding some invoices, and they're adding attachments for justification letters or approval letters and all of this other stuff. And that's all fine. You can add those attachments all time, all day long, and I don't care. But at some point, someone in finance is going to attach a purchase order, which means we can buy the things. That's important. That's an important event. So when that attachment is added, we might want to create a milestone that shows up for everybody that says the purchase order has been generated. That's an important milestone in the process. Everybody else can just upload attachments willy-nilly, and we don't care. But when that one attachment gets uploaded, and obviously we'd have to set a condition for that, but when that one attachment gets added that's got the purchase order in, that is a milestone. That means we can actually spend money, and however many dollars are in that purchase order, we can spend them freely. Well, presumably we can spend them freely on the stuff that's been approved. But in any event, that is sort of a milestone. We also have when the form is submitted, when the form is updated, or, and this is the important one and probably the most common one, when a condition has been met. And condition met means that we can just have a condition to evaluate anything that's evaluable in Process Director. And if that condition returns true, we can kick off a milestone. Now, if we look at the process timeline, it looks a little bit different. Again, we add a row and we have all the same fields here, but our triggers are a little different. Now, we have our standard activity started, activity completed, which are basically the task start and the task end. But the process has been started. So if we kick off a process, so let's say that I have a process, and depending on what happens in that process, I want to kick off a sub-process that sends this, whatever it is that I'm doing, sends it off to the legal department for a review. Now, not every process is going to need to be reviewed by legal. And so perhaps most don't need to be. And so in most cases, I wouldn't care. However, if I am going to send it over to legal, then when that legal review process starts, I might want to create a milestone that says this particular item has now been sent to the legal department for review and or approval. So for the process started for that legal review process, if it fires, then I'm going to want to set a milestone that we have started a legal review process. And I can also have when users complete a task, which is different than activity completed, because tasks only occur in the context of user activities. But activities, well, there's all kinds of activities. And so activity completed would include every single activity in the process timeline. So if any activity completes, this event would fire. Completed task, that only applies to user activities. So it would only fire on a user activity where the user has completed the task that was assigned to them, generally by clicking one of the completion buttons on the bottom of the form. Again, I have attachment added and attachment updated. Attachments are tricky, and that's why they have to be both on the form and the process timeline, because you can attach an attachment to either the form or the process timeline. Now, the default in Process Director is to add an attachment to the process timeline instance. That is the formal BP Logix recommendation. That is the default way that attachment controls work, and it's intentional because it's best, since forms are also a process attachment. If you attach the attachments to the process, that means if I open up the process instance, I have access to both the form and all of the attachments that were added, and they're all in one place. If I attach to the form, then if I open the process, I don't see any of those attachments. I now have to go to the form instance if I want to see attachments, and that's inconvenient. So we've got it set up so that everything gets attached to the process. So if I open up the process attachment, that's where I would see all of my form attachments. So if I am going to be adding attachments and I want to run the attachment added activity or event to create a milestone, I'd probably want to do it on the process timeline, not on the form if I'm storing the attachments with the process. So it becomes important, especially with attachments, for using that trigger at wherever it is that you're storing the form attachments. And then we have form attached. So that means anytime that a form is attached to the process. So if I have like 3 different forms and I attach a different form to the process to make it, let's say, through a set form data action, not set form data, a form actions timeline activity, and I grab a second form and I attach it to the process and set it as the default form. Then when I attach that second form to the process, I might want to kick off a milestone there. Maybe that second form is only used for, managers. And so I know that once that form is attached, I can tell my submitter, management is now reviewing your request. That becomes a milestone. And once again, I have condition met. So if that condition gets met, then I kick off the appropriate milestone for that condition. So they both work the same. So let's go back to our form, and we want to create at least one form milestone. To do that, let's go back and look at how our form is set up. So form fields so I'm on the properties tab of the form definition. So I've got form fields are enabled only when new form instance equals yes. So that means that I want all of my form fields disabled once the form has been submitted. Now, this is quite common to do, and you do that so that as the form moves through the process, you can specify the fields that you want enabled that will allow whoever is assigned a task to complete that task and to provide whatever data it is that they might need to provide, without giving them the ability to edit the original request, because you do want to preserve that original request. Now, it may be that you have to send that back to the submitter in a loop so that the submitter can make whatever changes an approver has requested, and then those fields would need to be enabled so that the admitter or the submitter could make the changes and resubmit the form. But in general, we want to make our form essentially read-only once we have submitted the form, and we don't want people to be able to go in and make changes to it. Okay, so that's fine, but what happens if at some point one of the approvers might need to enable that form for editing? So we're going to need to set up a control, and let's put it down here at the bottom. And I'll just stick it right below this. We'll just drop a checkbox in here, and we'll call this checkbox edit, and edit this form. Okay, so fine. I now have the ability to edit this form. Now, this is going to be disabled as soon as I submit the form. So I've got to figure out when I want this form to be enabled. So let's save it real quick. And I think the first activity is called activity 1 here, but I just want to check that to be sure. And we'll have to wait for this form to save so I can go look at my process timeline. It is called approval 1. Well, that is pretty important. So I want my little checkbox. We can just go to the Form Controls tab to do this. Let's go ahead and delete that original comment log that I demoed. Let's go here to Checkbox Edit. And I remember this form field is going to be disabled after there is a new form instance. In fact, I'm going to disable it everywhere. I am going to set some special properties here. I am going to set the read-only options to field is enabled when, and we're only going to have it enabled when our approval 1 activity, so timeline activity, running activity name is, and we'll just grab the timeline activity here, approval 1, and otherwise disabled. Okay, so assuming that I've configured this right, this checkbox is only going to be displayed whenever the running activity name is approval 1. Okay, so that's great. And now that control will be enabled. And the rest of the form is presumably all going to be disabled. However, when I check this box, I want to make the field editable. So that means I need to make it an event field. So we now have this checkbox edit event. And I think that's all I need to do. And if it's not, I can go and look at my other application and be sure that I follow all the configuration. But I think I'm fine. I've got checkbox edit. It's only going to be available when I'm in the approval 1 activity. If I click it, I want to make the form editable, right? So I need to add another condition over here to make my form editable. Actually, I probably wouldn't do it in the form. I would probably do it inside a section. So what's my top section? Is it the submitter section? What is that section called? Section control, request info section, and let me look at how my form is designed. What have I done here? Oh, okay. This stuff is not in a section, so I can't just do a section. So fine. Let's just take these 3 controls here. So we'll have to do them one control at a time. A little tedious, but we'll do it here. So we will change this to field is enabled when, and because these are automatically disabled fields, so I'm just gonna, we don't have to go through all 3 of these. So we'll just do this. We'll just say that this field is enabled when, and our checkbox info or checkbox edit is checked. So we can go and change the submitter if we decide we want to edit this form. So clicking on edit this form, which is now really inconvenient because it's way down here at the bottom, and this is the control that's going to change. But that's fine. We'll keep it the way it is. So technically, I'm all cool with this form. Let's run it just to be sure. So we'll submit it after it runs. So we just need to test to be sure that this all works. Okay, great. So this is all editable because it's a new form instance. Everything is editable. My edit this form, however, is not editable. So I need to submit it. Okay, so now I'm running in approval one. Cool. So this is not editable anymore. However, edit this form is. So I am going to click edit this form. And now if I scroll all the way back up here to the top, the submitter is once again an editable field. Okay, great. Super happy with that. I think if I was to make one change here, I think I forgot to check the otherwise disabled checkbox because I want it disabled even on a new form instance. So that means that now when I run the form, it should never be editable, even when the form first runs. This submitter control should only be editable whenever I click the check edit button. So not editable, submit, and reload, not editable, click edit this form, editable, click edit this form again, not editable. Now let's click edit this form and oh, it won't change anything. If I hit approve, it'll still be checked. I just won't be able to uncheck it. So now my submitter thing is permanently editable. Okay, well, let's forget that. I obviously have a little more configuration to do, but let's not waste time doing any configuration. I know that it's working the way that I want, which is fine, except for one thing. I want to be able to know and to tell people that somebody put this form in an editable state at a particular date and time. Our assumption, of course, is that once this form is submitted, everything is kind of locked in stone. All the form fields are disabled, which is great. But if we're going to give somebody the permission to edit this form, we want to know that somebody edited this form. That means that I'm going to need to create a milestone. Now here in this second journal control, the reason why I disabled it to allow user comments is, and I don't have to do it this way. I could do it in a different way. I could have a single journal control that shows both milestones and shows comments. So this is not an either or situation. I'm just showing you how you can split it up. There are a lot of configuration options here. We could only have one journal control on a form, and we could do both. In this case, we'll just show sort of two different journal controls on the same form that do two different things. So the reason why I turned this off is because I wanted to show my milestones in this second journal control. Of course, to show a milestone, I have to have one. So we're going to save and close our form, and we're going to go back to the Milestones tab, and we're going to start building it. Now, because this checkbox is a event control, I can go in and go to my milestone. Where's my little flag? There it is. There's my milestones flag. I can go here on the milestones flag and I can add my first milestone row and I can choose my trigger. Technically, I could do this on form event because this is going to happen when the checkbox fires, but I'm actually going to pick condition met. And I'm going to need to specify the condition under which I want this trigger to fire. In this particular case, it doesn't matter whether I choose form event or condition met, because either way, I'm going to have to use the same condition, which is that the checkbox edit is checked. So condition met works, but I could pop it off on the form event too. So either or, we'll just use condition met in this example. Now I need a milestone group. Milestone groups are important. Just as we had those comment groups on the controls configuration, there's also a selector for the milestone group on the controls configuration. We haven't looked at it yet because we haven't created any milestone groups. Right now, there are no milestone groups. So simply by naming a milestone group in this box, we are going to create an accessible milestone group. And this milestone group is going to be J 2025. And it's going to be that because I don't remember what previous milestone groups exist on the system. And so Journal 2025 is probably not something I've used anywhere before. So this is going to be fine. A caveat with the milestone groups. On the milestones tab, if I keep adding triggers, each trigger is going to need to go to a milestone group. Ultimately, I am going to need to go back to my form, and I'm going to need to associate that form with a specific milestone group, which will enable that form to show only events or milestones that get invoked from the specific milestone groups I checked. Now, on the form, we have the comment group name, which is just a text box. And it only allows me to type in, a particular comment group name. And so there's only one per control. But I can have multiple milestone groups in a set of milestones on the milestones tab. I might have 2, 3, or 4 groups. And so on a journal control, I might have some journal control that only shows milestones from group 1, but I might have another journal control that I want to show milestones from group 1, 2, and 3. So I can apply multiple milestone groups to a journal control, and we'll go back and do that. Now, problem with milestone groups, which all get created here and become part of the system, and they're all dynamic. So let's add another row. And let's say that down here on this row, I meant to hit J 2025. And what I actually hit was KJ 2025, and I didn't notice that. And then I just went on and made my milestone. Well, if I have associated my journal control with J 2025, this is not J 2025. This is way different. This is 2022-05. So let's get rid of one of those zeros. Well, it doesn't really matter. I made a typo, in this case, multiple typos. These are not the same milestone groups. So if I say I want on my journal control, look at everything for J 2025, it will do that. But this is not J 2025. It's what I intended it to be, but it's not what I ended up with. So I've actually inadvertently created 2 different milestone groups here. So it is important to remember that basically I'm creating milestone groups on the fly, and I'm doing it by text. So be sure that if you want multiple items in the same milestone group, which generally you do, especially as we move over to the process timeline, where it's going to have its own milestones. Those milestones also will need to be in the same group that I'm going to attach to the process timeline. So I need to be sure that those milestone group names match the milestone group names that I have in my form as well, so that I can, associate a single milestone group with the form and the process timeline. Let me go ahead and just delete that there. So I've got my milestone group. The next 3 properties are going to be displayed to the end user. So I got to be careful about what it is that I want to expose to the end user. I've got to give them a useful notification of some kind of what has happened. So in this one, we'll call form made editable. Editable in all small letters. So this is going to be the milestone name, that the form has been made editable. It is a logical descriptor of the event that I'm trying to let the user know occurred. I'm going to give it an icon, which I guess, let's put it in red and grab my little pencil icon, which is that one right there. So it'll show this little red pencil. And now I need to make the journal entry that is going to appear with the this is the appropriate explanatory text that is going to appear to the end user. So in this case, I want to specify who and when the person was that made this form editable. That did not make sense as a sentence. I want to specify who made the form editable and when. So we'll do, we can use system variables here, which makes our life a little easier. I don't know who's going to make this form editable, who might be actually running that activity, but that's fine. I'm just going to say that cur user made this form instance editable on, and then we'll drop in cur date time. So whenever a user has this form open and they click that checkbox, then I want the milestone to be created, form made editable, and I'm automatically going to instantly evaluate these two system variables when I create the journal entry. So it should let them know whenever I do this that I did it at whatever the time is going to be whenever I click the button, because we're not ready to click that button yet. Now we need to specify the condition under which this occurs. So we'll open the condition builder, and in this case, we are just going to check to see if checkbox edit is checked. So because I have a form event specified here, I can just use, I believe, condition met, and when that event fires, this evaluation will occur. And so I should be able to send my now corrected message to the user in the second milestone group once I configure it. But first, I need to update my form so that my milestone is saved. That is great. Now I can go into my form instance and go down here to the properties of my second journal control. And now we can go back up to this property right here where it says no milestone groups chosen, and there's a button here that says choose milestone groups. I'm going to click that, and it's going to show me all of the milestone groups that are in my system. And I knew that I had this group. I just didn't remember what I had named it, but it's called Webinar MS. That's not the one that I want. I've got this one right here, J2025. By the way, I do have the ability to choose multiple milestone groups if I want to use multiple milestone groups. So you can make this as complex as you desire to. I think for a training webinar, we should not make it too complex. So we're going to stick with the J2025 group. So if that's the group that I'm going to apply to this particular control, and remember, I can't apply this group. This group doesn't exist until I have created a milestone, at least one, either on the form or the process timeline, and I've given it the milestone group name. Only after I have saved that single record, and that's all I have. I have one single record, that condition met milestone. But now this group exists. And so because I now have an existing group with one milestone in that group, I can now use this same group name to create multiple milestones anywhere else that I need to create them, and they'll all be tracked. So all I have to do is set this milestone to the J2025 group. Although, as I just said, we can have multiple milestone groups. So you can make this super complex. But for right now, we're just going to keep J2025. Now, because I've chosen J2025, my text here has changed. It no longer says no milestone group set. It now says milestone groups J2025. By the way, if I select a second milestone group or a third, then whenever I set them, it's going to give me in a comma separated list all of the milestone groups that are available for this particular journal control, and it will display any of the milestones that fire from any of those milestone groups. Now, because I've got it set to form instance, none of these milestone groups exist, and so they'll never fire. But if I had this set to say case instance, or even better, no scope, then it's going to look anywhere in the system, anywhere in the system. Any one of these two milestone groups fires, it's going to show up in this journal control on this form. So this is a very powerful notification system to let people know when important things have happened that are important to the business process aspect of what you're doing for each of your applications. So these are really business level notifications, not process level notifications. We're not really concerned with letting users know what's happening in the process itself. These are not technical messages. These are business type messages that let users know that something has happened, which from a business standpoint is an important event. So we're going to go back in here and get rid of those other two, by the way, since we're only using this milestone group. We'll simplify it again. So now that I just have one milestone group, that's the only milestone that has been displayed. So I've got my form configured. I've got my milestone group configured. Let's run the form and let's see what happens. So let's keep our fingers crossed that I've configured this properly on the fly. Okay, there's our form. So we know that nothing is editable here, so we have to submit it. So submitted, nothing is editable. We're going to mark this form as editable. And other than the fact that I have a syntax error in my system variable, which makes it not a system variable, second one worked. First one, a little messed up, but my milestone appeared. So let's go back. Let's fix my milestone. So let's go back to our milestones tab. Where's the little flag? There it is. And let's replace that parentheses with a curly bracket. Let's run our form again. Let's submit it. Now let's make the form editable. There we go. That's the message that we wanted to see, that I made this form instance editable on 5/8/2025 at 10:22 a.m. It's 11:22 a.m. So why am I showing Alaska time? I may need to go in and check what my time zone settings are on this machine. But in a if I lived in Alaska, this would be correct. I don't live in Alaska, so I'm not sure why I'm looking at Alaska time. But in any event, it gives me my milestone message. And I can't make any comments here. Well, I can't make any comments here since this journal control, like all other controls except for the submitter, is now locked. So obviously, if you're going to have a journal control where you want to have users have conversations, be sure that you don't disable that control, because if the control is disabled, well, then we can't have conversations, and that's our case here. But this control works. Now, when I turn it off, nothing happens, but if I turn it back on, I can just spam my events right here in this particular journal control with every time that I have made a change to that, or every time I have made the form editable on that control. And that lets me know that whatever it is that I'm seeing may not be the original data, because Dale Franks made this form editable. And I may want to contact him and ask him what sort of changes were made on the form to be sure that the form that I am seeing is the substantially same request that was initially submitted by the initiator. Okay, now that I have this on the form, this milestone group, J2025, I can also create milestones on the timeline. So there are a couple of different ways of doing this. So I have a result notification activity that fires, and I have a set request number activity that fires. Now, both of these, one is a notify activity and one is a request number being set. And so I have a couple of different ways that I can set up a milestone. So let's go, we'll add a row, and let's say when an activity starts. So I forgot what the name of my parent activity is. It's called approval loop. Okay, great. So we have a parent activity called approval loop. Now I could do this a couple of different ways. Um, so let's do it a couple of different ways. Let me go up here to set request number instead. So we'll go to set rec num and we'll close that. I don't know why I copied it because I probably don't need to copy it. We're going to come down here to, I don't think I made any changes, but okay, fine. We'll go to our add row and we're going to go with activity completed. And I'm going to set a condition here because what I want to do, whenever my very first activity, which is set request number, is completed. Now, nothing tells the user that the request number has been set, but whenever you first submit the form, you don't know what your request number is. So I'm just going to create a condition. So timeline activity. Um, I want it to be for that particular activity. So if the running activity name is my set request number, so timeline activity. Oh, there we go. Set rec num. Okay, so I want this to be set to activity completed, and the running activity name has to be set request number. So once my set request number activity is completed, then in my J2025, and the J stands for journal, by the way. So in my J2025 milestone group, I'm going to need a milestone name, and we'll call it request number generated. And we'll set, we'll use blue, I guess, this time. It doesn't matter what I use. We'll just use a plus sign. And we will say, now in this case, this is kind of unnecessary because we have the request number field. What have I done? We have the request number field. So I wouldn't really need, so this is just sort of an extraneous one. We're really just sort of displaying capabilities here rather than trying to figure out something useful, mainly because I'm trying to do this on the fly and talk about principles and try to figure out good use cases. And sometimes I just can't figure out good use cases on the fly. But we'll say your request has been given a ID number, and I think the form field name is recnum. I hope so. But when my activity completes, I should see this. I am going to try to ensure that the English is correct on here. So I'm just going to go ahead and update this. And so now in milestone group J2025, I now have a form milestone, and now I have a process milestone. So with that, let's test this and see if this thing works. We'll go back to, let's just go here. Oh, not there. Let's just go to Journal Milestone Webinar, and let's run our form, and let's submit our form. And there we go. Your request has been given an ID number, but there is nothing in that ID number. So that's not good. So let's go back to the form design. And it is called request number. Well, it's super important if you're going to use system variables to be sure that you use the correct field name. So I got pretty formal apparently with the field names. That's fine. Because now I should be able to run it, and I should be able to submit it. And I should see a request number, which in this case is request number 610. And that is indeed the request number that has been applied. And of course, obviously, I can also edit my form. So there we go. I've got a milestone for both a form and for a process timeline. As long as I'm using the same milestone group for both of them, then I can have multiple milestones that get drawn to the user's attention and displayed in a journal control on the form so that they can be advised of relevant milestones in business. Now, when to make some of these milestones occur might get a little tricky. So a few minutes ago, I talked about I might have things that are happening where I've got several events occurring all at one time, right? So let's go here. Let's create a couple of new child activities. So we'll have approval 3, and let's create one more. So I've got these 2 child activities. Now, these are both child activities of the parent activity, and that means that activity or approval 1, and let's call this approval 3, and we'll call this one down here approval 4. Okay. So I have, well, let's match all these colors up. So even though they're not all in the same order, and they're not all happening together, I've actually got these 3 activities that are all going to happen concurrently. And then we're going to go to approval 2. Now, what happens if I have all of these approvals and they aren't going to happen concurrently? How do I want to handle a milestone? Well, there's a couple of little ways that I can do this. What I might do is just drop in another child activity. Now, one easy way, let's start. One easy way would be to create a milestone when approval 2 starts. But if I do that, then I'm going to have to ensure, because let's say these are 3 important, when these 3 activities are done, so these 3 approvals 1, 3, and 4, when they're done, I need to notify either the user or I need to record the milestone that these 3 important approvals are done. So let's say there's an initial round of approvals. One goes to finance, one goes to my department, one goes to legal, let's say. I'm just making this up as I go along. I am not going to get past my department. I'm not going to get to management unless all three of these people have signed off. So in this particular case, I could probably use activity 2. What I could do is I could go with approval 2 and I could just go to its start when tab. And I could say, look, we'll just add a dependence on approval 3 and approval 4. Add dependence. There we go. Thank you. Approval loop, approval 4. Okay, now trouble is activity. So in that scenario, actually, that's the way I want it to work. Activity or approval 2 simply can't start until these 3 approvals are done. However, approval 2 might not need to be dependent on these other 2 activities. These activities may take a lot longer to complete than approval 1, and maybe longer to complete than approval 1 and approval 2 put together. And so I can't let anything happen here until all of these activities are complete. So in this case, what I would do, well, we'd have to go back to approval 2 here, of course, obviously, and we'd have to remove these 2 dependencies. Okay, so now I have this loop here that's got these 2 dependent activities, but these activities are running concurrently. So how would I want to say that just activities 1, 2, and 3 are done, assuming I don't care about activity through approval 2? Well, what I might need to do is just make an activity down here. We're calling it activity 2.5 right now, but let's just call it milestone. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this activity as a wait type activity. Now, here's the thing about wait activities. Wait activities, by default, just end automatically. To configure a wait activity to wait for a specified period of time, you have to set a duration in business days or weeks or months or whatever it may be. Then you have to go to the due date tab. And then on the time limit expires, you have to put in wait until at least due date. And the due date will be calculated from generally the configured activity start. You set 3 days, and you have it set to wait until at least due date. Then the wait activity will wait for 3 days. However, if I don't do that, and I just have take no action set, then this activity is not going to wait for 3 days because it's not configured to. This activity will start. It will say, okay, well, what happens if I blow past the due date? Oh, nothing. Take no action. Yeah, there's no reason for me to run. It's just going to end automatically. So you can basically configure a wait task more or less as a milestone. You could also, if you didn't want to use a wait task, you could also use a notify task. Now, a notify task might even be better because notify tasks don't actually do anything unless you create a notification on the notifications tab. And notify tasks by default show up with the little square icon. And that little square icon is the normal icon in the Gantt chart world for milestones. So that's why we've given them that. And so now I have this notification activity, which has no notifications at all, but it is an activity that I have that I can make dependent. So let's say that I need to go to start when, and I need to add 3 dependents on it. So approval 1, approval 3, and approval 4. There. Now this is dependent, if I click on it, on those activities ending. So irrespective of how long approval 2 takes or what have you, I'm going to fire a milestone when these 3 approval activities are done. These are 3 important approval activities that once they are done, now says that, well, whatever the milestone is. And now I can set the milestone to occur whenever this activity runs. So I've got approval 1, approval 3, and approval 4. They will run in parallel. And when all 3 of them are done, I now have this milestone activity that I've created, which again is just a notification that notifies nobody of anything, but notification activities occur instantly. They happen and then we move on. So I know when my milestone activity is going to occur. So I can then go update my timeline. I can then go to my milestones. I can add a row. And once again, this time I'll just put it in as activity started. But my condition for this one, when the activity starts, will be that the running activity name is milestone. And again, I will call this J 2025. How I'm going to make this run is going to be interesting because I'm going to have to complete all of those activities. So I've got that activity there. So we'll call it initial approvals complete as my milestone name. And we'll give it a little green check box. There it is, little green check box. And so all of the initial approvers, are done. Who cares what the initial approvers did? They're done. Let's not make this any more complicated than it has to be, especially at 11:41 in the morning. So we will set OK on this. And now we'll run our form and we'll submit it. Yeah, we know that works. And now I've got a whole bunch of currently running activities. I did not turn off notifications on any of these activities. My mailbox is going to be so full. All right, so I have 3 activities, all of which are running. I guess I'll complete this one. And now I'm running in approval 1 and approval 3. What activity is this running in? This is approval 3. I should be able to complete that one. So where are we running now? There's approval 1 still occurring. So let me complete that one. There we go. All of the initial approvers are done, and I am now in the approval 2 step of my process timeline activity. But all of my initial approvers are done. And I should have clicked edit this form when I was in activity 1, but I forgot to do that. So we're not going to see our little red pencil mark over here. But I've got multiple milestones showing up. And if I wanted to, why not do it? Let's go back to our form. Let's do one more thing since we have a couple of minutes available to us. We'll do one more thing. We'll go into our form here and we are just going to get rid of this very first control and get rid of that blank line there. And we're going to allow viewer comments here. We'll just call this group 1. Our milestone group is set there. We're now allowing user comment. And just to ensure that we can do this, we are going to go to field properties and we are going to set this field is enabled. So it will always be enabled for us. So now We have a single journal control, although admittedly, it'll be a little more confusing of a journal control when the form runs, because everything is now all going to happen in this one space here. So I've got comments that I can make and reply and send, and let's add another one, and let's add a second reply here. Okay, well, I've got all, send. There we go. So I've got all of that happening. Now I'm going to submit my form, and we'll have to look on that routing slip sure is useful whenever you're trying to do complex stuff and you're not sure what process you're in. So I am running activity approval 4. Okay, so that I want to complete. Oh, and my request has been given an ID number. So that's now showing up here. So now I'm going to go ahead and add another reply. Okay, we'll send that. And let's add something else there. And let's complete activity 4. And now I'm running activity or approval 3. So let's complete that. I'm in approval 1. So let's edit this form. And now the form has been made editable, but we have so much to say on this. And we've got replies to make on this. Okay, great. Now we're saying, okay, well, fine. We're just going to unedit that form. And I'm just going to go ahead and make my approval here. And so now I am in, all of my initial approvers are done. So I now have a single journal control, which has everything. This is why I made 2 separate journal controls from the get-go. Depending on how much activity is going on and how many replies that you have, this can get a little confusing and kind of hard to scroll through, especially with this vertical height. You're probably going to want to make this a lot taller so that you have to scroll less and you can see more at any given time. But you don't have to do 2 separate controls. You can put everything into a single journal control, both user comments and milestones, and save yourself maybe some space. I think the requirement that this field needs to be a little taller kind of eliminates any sort of space saving that you might have. However, I suppose it's always possible that you could set them on a form in a table and just have one journal control on the left side. You have a 2-column table, have a journal control in each column, and one would show comments and one would show milestones. But now we're getting into design. That's really up to you. However you think it would look great to do it. But there we go. That is journals and milestones for today. And we're edging closer to noon, so it's time for me to shut up. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again next time. Until then, Tuesday, Feature Spotlight webinar. What's going on in the product? Where are we at? What's coming up? All of that, going to talk about it on Tuesday. So be sure to be there. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. So long.